Hey guys, today's video is very straightforward. I'm going to make it as quick as possible, going right through the mistakes. 5 seed starting mistakes that a lot of new people make. I am going to give a bonus at the end of the video because you can avoid all 5 mistakes. And if you make the last one, it takes all the work you've done over the past several weeks getting your seeds going. It takes them and just makes them absolutely useless. So stick around for that. All right, let's get started. Let me know in the comments if you have any mistakes that you've made and how you fixed them that I don't mention today. Mistake number 1 is starting your seeds too early. A lot of people make this mistake. I still do sometimes because you get the catalogs in the winter, you order your seeds, and you're just so anxious for spring, you want to get it started. The problem is you can't rush the weather. And if your last frost date is 12 weeks from the day you start your seeds, you're going to be babying seedlings, turning into actual plants indoors. Now, a lot of people have room to grow seedlings. Like on this tray, there's several hundred seedlings. This table could not hold several hundred actual full-grown plants. And that's exactly the problem you're going to get into if you start too early. So 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost date. If you don't know your last frost date, I'll put a link down below, or you can just Google your zip code, your city, and last frost date. Starting too early also, you're not going to be able to grow these in these seed containers, so you're going to have to pot up all the plants instead of just taking them out and putting them in the garden when the time is right. Mistake number 2, heat. A lot of times, I have nothing fancy here, it's just in a garage, but in some climates, garages freeze, or certainly, don't get to the heat level that is needed for some seedlings to germinate. Cool season crops, you're not going to really have an issue with. They like to be germinating, between 50, 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Unless you have a freezing garage, then you're still going to have to warm that up a little bit. But certainly seeds like tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, cucumbers, all of the summer crops, but especially those, they need heat. Peppers, for sure. If you're going to try to grow peppers indoors or start them indoors, they need heat. So you want to invest in a heat mat, preferably one that's got a thermostat on it so you can choose your temperature. You want to choose around 75 degrees Fahrenheit. And what that does is that just heats the potting soil just enough to give that seed its initiation, its start into the world. Whereas if you didn't have that, they could sit until wherever you're starting those seeds ends up producing those temperatures that it needs. Now, if you just had a couple of trays and you have an appliance like a refrigerator, a windowsill over a radiator, most seeds don't need light to germinate, so you can just put those in those locations that are warm until they start to sprout, and then they will definitely need sunlight. And that brings us to number 3. The third mistake people make is to not have enough light for their seedlings. First off, there's no grow light, no light bulb that is as powerful as the sun. If you have a south-facing window that gets 6 to 8 hours of full direct sun every day, then you can grow them in that window. If you have a greenhouse that is heated, depending on your climate, that gets full sun, you can grow them in there. I don't have either of those things. I think most people don't. And so I have to opt for grow lights. Now, that doesn't have to be a scary proposition. You can use any type of bulb. It doesn't matter if it's a long fluorescent tube, if it's a CFL, if they still make those, LED, doesn't matter the shape of the bulb. And it definitely doesn't have to say grow light or made for plants. It doesn't have to say any of that stuff. They will actually charge you more just for those words. You can go to any light bulb section, go to Home Depot, Lowe's, wherever, and you're just looking for the label on the box to give you certain numbers. You're looking for the words lumens and Kelvin, and you want the number between lumens to be 1500 to 2000 lumens. That is the intensity of the light, the brightness of the light. And you want 4500 to 6500 Kelvin. That is the color temperature, not the temperature it puts off, but the color temperature on the spectrum from blue to red. You're wanting to mimic the same color temperature as the sun. Now, it might say for Kelvin, it might give you the numbers and then say daylight. That's what you're looking for. So as long as both of these numbers are where you want it to be, you can use them for starting your seeds. Now, I have a professional grow light here. That's a bit different. That is more powerful. Now, the other type of bulbs, if you got the lumens and Kelvin, they will work, but you have to have the light bulb about 2 inches, at most 2 inches, I would say, to get the amount of light into your plants that you need. So you can either, if your light lowers and raises, you can raise the light along with the growth of the plants, or you can set them up on bricks, boards, whatever, so they're close to the light, and then lower those things, take out bricks or whatever to lower the trays as the plants get taller, but you always want the plants about 2 inches from that light source. With professional grow lights like this, their intensity is a lot stronger than any of those other type of bulbs. They're more expensive, but they also light a wider area. So you have to figure out how much area you want, how many of those other types of bulbs you would need to cover that area, and see if this doesn't make more sense. I'll put a link to this one down below so you can at least check it out. Not sponsored, by the way. The fourth mistake you can make is to baby your plants in here so much that when they go outside, they're thrown into a completely different type of setting, and they will possibly not die, but they will be set back. One of the great things that you can do is to use something like this, an old fan. Now, I haven't had it on during our talking here because it's loud and old and creaky. But take a look what it does here to these seedlings. It is an oscillating fan, so as the fan moves across, they start to blow in the breeze. All right, I'm gonna turn it off because it sounds like it has arthritis. So why do you want your plants to blow in the breeze? Well, because that's what they do in nature. When those plants shake back and forth and bend in the breeze, it is strengthening their stems. It is causing the plant to be more resilient. So when you put it outside, it's going to do a heck of a lot better than a plant that has been completely in this still, nurtured environment. So that is a big one. And you don't have to have anything special. Any oscillating fan, even if it's on its last leg like this one, will work. The fifth mistake, before we get to the bonus, the fifth mistake is watering your seedlings from below. Now, there's a lot of reason for this. You don't want to have the top of your soil in your containers constantly damp. It causes fungal diseases like damping off. It attracts fungus gnats to lay their eggs in there, and that causes a whole other problem, many problems, least of which is the annoyance of having gnats flying around everywhere. It also keeps the moisture off of the leaves. You don't want leaves wet in an indoor space. Now, the fan does help with both of those things. Actually, I should have mentioned that. Keeps the leaves, it dries off the leaves, and it dries out the surface of the soil. So that fan kind of does double duty. Watering from below and making sure the lowermost portion of each of those cells is wet causes the roots to grow downward rather than staying on the surface. Now, you can do this by setting your seed tray in a tray that doesn't have holes in it that you can fill with water. Put it in there. When you see it soak to the surface of the soil, take it out. You don't want them sitting in that. They will drown. I've fallen in love with these seed trays. They're self-watering trays from Gardener Supply. There's a reservoir for water under here. There's a stand that keeps the tray elevated out of the water, but then they've got a wicking mat that soaks up the water, distributes it across this panel, and allows the bottom of the tray to soak it up. So they always get the perfect amount of water. Again, not sponsored, but these have been a game changer for me, and I'll leave a link down in the video description so you can check them out. They're not cheap, but they are worth it. They are very strong. These will last for a long, long time. All right, the bonus. We've spent 4 to 6 weeks germinating the seeds, taking care of them, getting them to the proper size, and our weather outside is ready. Frosts are gone. It's time to move them outdoors. But you have to do it slowly in a certain way called hardening them off. If you just take these, even with the fan, they've been in a sheltered environment, much different than what you're going to be putting them into. The sun, even with this grow light here, the sun is way more intense than they've had ever in their life. And they have to develop a thicker skin. Literally, they have to kind of develop their sunscreen to be protected. They can't just go out into a full day of sunshine. They're also not probably used to the temperature fluctuations that you're going to get outside at this time of year. So there's 2 ways to do it. There's the traditional way, and there's the lazy way. So the traditional way is every day you take them outside for an extended period of time. Every day it gets a little bit longer. Start with an hour in the shade, bring them back in. Next day, 2 hours in the shade, bring them back in. The next day, maybe 2 hours to 3 hours in partial sun, bring them back in. The next day, 3 to 4 hours in partial sun, bring them back in. The next day, you can leave them out for 5 or 6 hours in full sun, then bring them back in. And then after that, it's about a 7-day process where you're going to finally have them accustomed to all the different variables outside, and then they can now be left outside and planted in the garden. Well, I don't know about you, but I think a lot of people have jobs. And so if you're not home every day, all day to take care of this process, there is a lazy man's way, or maybe I would say a smarter way to do it. Look on your upcoming 7-day forecast and find a period of time that you've got 3 days in a row of overcast weather. When you see that, that's your 3-day window. You're going to take them outside, out in the open, where it would normally be full sun, but you've got that cloud cover to protect them. 3 full days of overcast weather, that's all you need to do. So set them out when you go to work, bring them in when you come home. Definitely don't leave them out overnight. And after that 3-day period, they will be ready to plant out in the garden. Now, I did mention fungus gnats very quickly. If you've ever had little black flying things around your plants indoors, those are fungus gnats. And they can really cause a lot of damage to the root system of the plant. Plus, they're super annoying. So if you have that issue, click on this video right here. I'll give you several ways to deal with them, to prevent them, and to get rid of them once you've got them. I'll see you guys on the next video.